Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today's tutorial is all about granny squares. So granny squares are these squares that are made up of 3 stitches. As you can see, each grouping has 3 stitches, and those 3 stitch groupings are what makes this considered granny square. They're typically made up of double crochets, though there are a lot more intricate patterns and things that you can do once you kind of understand the basics. This is just your basic granny square. We are going to go into obviously your tools. So you're just going to need your crochet hook of choice. Whatever hook size is recommended for your project based upon your yarn, just use that hook. You're going to need a pair of scissors, and of course you're going to need a darning needle. So these are the tools that you're going to need to do the granny square. And then of course you just need your yarns of choice. I'm using 24/7 cotton, but whatever yarn you want to use is fine. So we're going to start out by learning just the basic square. So for this project here, I'm just going to grab out my first color. I'm going to start with the green because it's going to be a lot easier for you to see than if I were to start with the chocolate brown. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a magic circle. Now, let me just start out by saying you do not have to make a magic circle. The first way you can do your granny square would be to make your standard slip knot. Chain 4, and then put a slip stitch into the first loop or to the first chain, and now you have a little loop at which to begin your crochet. So at this point, all you would need to do is chain 2, yarn over, and go ahead and start your granny stitches this way. So if you do not feel comfortable doing a magic circle, go ahead, chain 4, and you're going to start putting your double crochets into this loop. So just so you can see how that, let me move this off the way, it's a little distracting. So you can see how that works. You would just chain 2, and then from here yarn over, you would go into the loop, and then you would double crochet, and you would go into the loop again and put another double crochet, and you would just keep going following the pattern that I'm going to do next. So this is for you if you just don't feel comfortable doing a magic loop. Me, I like to start my projects with a magic loop. I love the magic loop. It's a way to make sure that that hole gets cinched in nice and tight in the end. So for the magic loop, it can be complicated. So let's go slow. You're going to take these 2 fingers, okay, and face the palms towards you. You're going to lay your yarn on top of those fingers. Waist yarn is coming down. Now from here, I go ahead and I'm going to place my finger right here to just kind of secure that. And I'm going to grab the working yarn and I'm going to wrap it around my finger. And before I come over, I'm going to cross it over the other yarn, making an X. When you have this and you see the X right here with your waist yarn coming down, and it is imperative that the waist yarn is down, okay? Now put your hand, your thumb on top of that X and turn your hand. Now from this point, what I like to do is I like to put up another finger, and I'm going to take the working yarn and I'm going to place it over here. So what you have is like a uneven equal sign, right? And I'm just securing this working yarn between my ring and my pinky finger. And that is just to secure it and also to differentiate between these 2. okay, so they don't get confused. Your working yarn is over here. So you want to make sure that these are spread apart, because what we're about to do, you want to be able to see clearly. Take your hook and go underneath this first stitch, okay, underneath the first one, okay, and then you're going to grab the second, okay, so under, grab the second, pull through, okay. Once you get it through, just go ahead and kind of twist the yarn to lock it in place. Do not let nothing go. Nothing needs to be let go right now. And then you're just moving the yarn. So all I'm doing once I got that hook loop through is I'm just twisting the yarn, twisting my hand rather, so that it's more comfortable, in a more comfortable working position. That's it. You're just pulling it through and then twisting up your yarn so that you can grab the next part. So the next part you're going to grab is this up here where you're holding your ring finger. You're going to grab the yarn up there, okay? Just this piece that's up here. This is a part of the working yarn. And with this, you're going to grab it and you're going to pull it through. And I want you to note that I have let nothing go. My finger is still firmly securing these yarns. So from here, you're going to pull tight. You have just made your magic loop. So you're going to grab your working yarn and that's going to pull it to tighten it. And now we are ready to begin our first. And so a magic loop, you see, you pull this and this hole shrinks. That is what your magic loop is going to do. Once you have your magic loop or your chain 4 and slip stitch circle, so whenever I'm doing a double crochet and I want to double crochet in that first stitch, you can chain 2 if you want. I like to do a stacked single. So a stacked single is as follows. You want to work on top of this thread that you're going to pull. So don't leave it outside of your work, leave it inside of the work, and we're going to crochet on top of it. So we're going to kind of hide it in there just a little bit. So it's just going to help make it more secure. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a single crochet. So you go under, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1. So now we have a single crochet. What I'm going to do to make it a stacked single crochet is where these two stitches are, right here, 1, 2, I am actually going to go into the second stitch like that and yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. And so these 2 together equals 1 double crochet. So I'll show you that one more time and then we'll continue. But again, if this is confusing at all, just do chain 2 and keep it moving. So we're going to start out with just a single crochet. So go underneath the circle, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Now you have these 2 stitches side by side here. We're going to go into the second stitch and then we're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And I like this stitch because it gives you a normal stitch to go in through at the top. It's less obvious to see in your work than a chain would be. A chain looks completely different than a double crochet. This has a good thickness on it, so I prefer this in the overall aesthetic of my square than a chain 2. So that is why I do that. So anyways, once you've got this, this is now your first double crochet. So now we're going to add 12 total double crochets into this space. So the 12 double crochets are going to split up in groups of 3. So we're going to put 1, we have 2 and 3. So again, this stacked single counts as 1 double crochet. So we have 1, 2, 3 stitches, and you see how that looks like the others? I love it. It looks so much better than a chain. So once you have your group here, we're going to actually chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to add 3 more double crochets into our loop. 1, that's 2, and 3, just like that. And then go ahead and chain 2. And if you ever find that your loop is starting to feel a little loose and it's getting a little weird, you could just kind of pull it a little bit to tighten it back up and make it more comfortable for you. So now we're going to just do that again. We're going to put 3 more double crochets into our loop. So 1, 2, 3, and then chain 2. Okay, so now we have 3 clusters of 3. We're going to add 1 more into our loop. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So lastly, we're going to chain 2, and then we can pull our loop closed. Once your loop is closed, you're going to slip stitch into the top of this first double crochet here. So this is why I prefer it to the chain, because it looks just like all the other stitches and it just makes it so easy to find that top stitch. So once you slip stitch into that first one, now from this point, how I like to do mine is I like to slip stitch over to the next corner. I like to start my corners. I like to start at the beginning of my corners. So we're going to slip stitch all the way across until we get to this first corner. And if you're not sure what a slip stitch is, please go ahead and check out my beginner's tutorial and it'll break all of that down for you. So from this point here, you will see you have 3 clusters and you'll have 4 little corners here and you'll have 4 clusters of 3. And it's already kind of taken a bit of a squared shape, and that is because we chained 2 along the corners. So from here you can keep going, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my work. We're going to grab our next yarn. I like to put my hook into that hole right there where our chain 2 space is, and then I'm going to grab up my next color and I'm just going to place that on the hook, and I'm going to pull that into my work and then slip stitch that. Okay, so now I've got my yarn into my work and I'm going to just chain 1. Okay, and that chain 1 kind of secures it. And then I like to pull tight. So one more thing that I like to do for my color changes, and this is because I just don't like having to weave in, is if you want, you can just leave it. But what I like to do at this point is I like to tie a little knot. And this knot at this point just helps secure these yarns so that they don't go anywhere, so that there's no slippage, and it kind of just makes the tying in process a little bit easier for me. So I just go ahead and make a nice tight little knot right back there. And you're not going to see the knot because we're going to cover it with the corner stitches. So from here, you're going to grab your yarn and go ahead and take these and put them into your hand, and we're going to just work them we're going to work over top of those stitches. So from here, I'm going to do my stack single crochet like I did in the beginning. So you're going to go into your work, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both stitches. Then you have 1, 2 right here. You're going to go into the second one, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And now you have a stacked single crochet that is going to count as a double crochet. So from here, we're going to do 2 more double crochets into that same chain space. So 1, 2, and those 2 plus your stacked double or your stacked single creates a cluster of 3. From here, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to add 3 more double crochets into that same chain space. So that's 1, 2, 3. Just like that. From this point, I am going to actually go straight into the next cluster. I do not chain between my clusters on the sides. I only do it in the corners. You can chain 1 if you choose to. Just know that the more chains you put into your work, the larger the holes are going to be. So it's really a choice it's really up to you whether you want to chain in between these or not. You can go ahead and chain 1 if you prefer that. I'm just going to yarn over and go straight into the next cluster of 3. So we're going to put 1, 2, and 3 clusters into the next chain space. Then we're going to chain 2 because we're going to make a corner, and we're going to put 3 more into that chain space. Okay, so each corner is going to have 6 double crochets in it. 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. And then we're going to keep going. No chaining between. We're just going to go straight into the next chain space and put 3 double crochets, followed by a chain 2, and then another 3 double crochets into the same chain space. Okay, and then one more time, we're going to yarn over and go straight into the next chain space and put 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets. Okay, and then from this point we have our corners, and we're not going to do a chain since this is a side. We're not going to chain any between these. We're just going to slip stitch into the first double crochet, which is that stacked single. Okay, and then again we're going to work our way slip stitching in each stitch till we get over to the corner. So that first slip stitch, and then we're going to do one here, and then into the next one here, and then one more right here at the corner. And then from here, I'm actually going to clip these ends. For me, this is secure enough. And it's really also going to depend on the yarn if you have a really slippery yarn or not. But that seems to be enough to cover for me and how tightly I crochet. But if you want, you can take your darning needle and kind of work those stitches in a bit more, but that works for me. So from here, I want to switch colors again. So I'm going to cut that off. So grab our next yarn and we're going to proceed to add it in the way we did the brown. So from here, we're just going to put our hook into the corner, grab our yarn, pull through again, and then chain one. And then from here, again, my personal preference is to go ahead and tie these off. Again, you do not have to do it this way. You can wait till the end and do them all at the same time. You can weave them in and not knot them at all. This is just how I like to do it because I hate weaving in ends, especially when a project contains so many. I prefer to just tie a knot and then clip it later. So here we go. We're starting the next row and we're going to start it the way we've started every row I've done, and that is to do a stacked single. So we're going to go into our work, pull up this loop, yarn over, pull through two, go into the second, so 1, 2, go into the second there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two, and then just kind of pull this yarn over to kind of pop. Let's get it to focus. I'm gonna pull this yarn a little bit tight because I want to pop that knot underneath this yarn so it covers it. So you don't see the knot, just like the knot down here, you can't see the knot really, it's kind of being covered. I'm doing the same thing here. And now we're going to work over top of our ends and just secure them further. Again, we're going to just work our way around this granny square. We're going to yarn over, go into the chain space, yarn over, pull to two, yarn over, pull through two. And then we're going to do that again. And now we have a cluster of 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 2 because it's our corner, and we're going to put 3 more double crochets into the chain space. So 1, 2, and 3. I'm sorry if it's a little hard to see with the white on top of the white. Maybe I'll put this underneath to make it a little easier to see. All right, so there you have it. Those are secure. I will clip those later. And from here, we're going to just keep going. Again, I do not chain on my sides. I only chain in the corners. So we're going to go straight into our next opening, and we're going to put 3 double crochets into that space, and then again, without chaining between, we're going to go straight into this corner, place 3 double crochets into that space, and because this is a corner, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to put 3 more double crochets into the chain space. So 1, 2, and 3. So it looks just like this. And we're going to work our way around just like we've just did, going into the next space. No chaining in between, just straight into the next open space. 1, 2, 3. No chains, go into the next space. 1, 2, 3, and we are at our corner, so I'm going to chain 2 and go 3 more into the same space. No chaining between, we're going to go straight into that side space. 1, 2, 3, and again we're not going to chain, but we're going to go straight into this corner. 1, 2, and 3. This is a corner space, so we are chaining 2, and then putting 3 more double crochets into that same chain space. 1, 2, 3, and then again we're going to put 3 double crochets into this hole right here. No chaining in between stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and again we're not going to chain, but we are going to close up this with a slip stitch. So I'm going to put my loop into this first chain, and again, sorry, because the white on white is a little hard to see, and I'm going to yarn over, pull through, and then do a slip stitch, and then I'm going to slip stitch again all the way over to the corner. Okay, and we will do one more row because that is the design and pattern that I'm doing. So from here, again, one more time, we are at our corner. We're going to put our hook underneath, grab our yarn, pull through, and slip stitch through that first piece. Okay, and then go ahead and chain 1 like so. Pull your yarn nice and snug. Again, I like to come over to the back and tie a knot at this point. And then I can start my row. So again, stitching over top of my ends. I'm going to go into the chain space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, making a single crochet. 1, 2, I'm going to go into the second little stitch area over here, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 2. That is, again, the stacked single crochet. So from here, we're going to yarn over and do a double crochet and do yet another double crochet. Since we are at our corner, we are going to chain 2 and then put 3 more double crochets into this chain space. So 1, 2, did I say 2? I meant 3, and 3. Okay, just like that. Pull this yarn kind of tight. Make sure I want to pop that knot into this yarn over here without chaining between. We're just going to go straight into the next chain space, or the next space. There's no chain there. 1, 2, and 3. And then again, straight into the next space. 1, 2, 3. Again, without chaining, we're going to go into the next chain space, which is the corner. So 1, 2, 3, and it's a corner, so chain 2, and then go 3 more into the same space. So 1, 2, and 3. 3 double crochets into the next space. 3 double crochets into the next space. Oops. So 1, 2, and 3, chain 2, and then 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And then we're just going to work this same pattern all the way around until we get to the end. All right, so once we have reached the end, the only thing left to do is we're going to slip stitch this closed. So that is just going into your first stitch again. Pulling through, you do your slip stitch, and from here, go ahead, chain 1, cut your yarn, giving yourself enough room to be able to weave in your end. And that is your granny square. Now I'm going to take it a step further because I feel like no one ever really explains this, and it's really annoying when you get to this point and then you're like, now how do I weave this in? So I'm actually going to go through the process of showing you how to weave your ends in on this granny square. Now again, you can do this a number of different ways, and depending on the yarn you use, you may want to have it a little bit more secure or not. It's up to you. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show you how I weave this in. So let me get a couple of these cleared up so it's easier to see. So let's start with our inner here. So this is where we did our magic loop. So the first thing I like to do is go ahead and pull that nice and tight. And as you can see, that hole closes up completely. You cannot see through that, which is why I love the magic loop. And you want to make sure you have the back of your work. It is very important because this is going to be the part that is exposed and seen, and you really want to get all of your work to be done on the back. So we're going to take our yarn here and we're going to go ahead and get it on your darning needle. Now from here, you want to kind of see what direction your yarn is going in. And then I like to kind of go starting out in the direction my yarn is going. So I'm just going to do one loop around, kind of pulling my yarn through underneath these stitches. And again, when you're weaving in, you want to split as many stitches as possible. All of those split stitches are going to help secure, not that one though. Okay, all of the split stitches that you do, and by splitting I mean instead of going through maybe the whole stitch, only going through part of it. And what that's going to do, or split the yarn, sorry, not split the stitch, split the yarn. But that's just going to help secure it a little bit more and give your ends a bit of a added security that it's not just this clear path. So once I've gone around it one more time to secure, I'm going to split this yarn here, and this is just going to help kind of anchor my yarn as I make my way on through, so I don't just like undo everything I did. And then I'm going to go backwards in the opposite direction that I just finished going in. So whereas first I was working in the direction it was originally going, now I've kind of reversed that and I'm heading in the other direction. Now, if you want, while you still have some yarn left, you can kind of come into a piece like this. Okay. Yarn over and create a little knot that you can then pull tight, and then continue weaving that end in until you don't have much yarn left. So the reversing of the direction helps secure the yarn, and then depending on how secure you want it, that extra little knot that you put in helps secure it even more. And that should be enough. So from there, it's nice and tight and firm. You've got that added security of the little notch you put in there. And now I can go ahead and clip that. And that is how I weave in my center. And now I'm going to show you how I go about weaving in pretty much all the other pieces, and in particular the ends. Now sometimes I'm lazy and I don't even weave in these sections here, I just cut them, but the end right here and this last group I always weave in, because I just want that added security. So on this one, I like to go ahead and thread my needle, and from here I'm going to come to the back of my work like so, and then I'm going to just kind of go down into the work, weaving this in. So I'm going to go maybe under there, and there isn't a whole lot of rhyme and reason. I just want to make sure, obviously, of course, that I keep it towards the corners, and I'm just going to kind of weave it in towards the back. Now, if you look at it towards the front, you can't even see my needle going through, but in the back, it's here. So that's a way to just make sure that you're not affecting the aesthetics of the front side of your work. It's just to check and see if you see the needle going through it. And then I'm going to come down here, and then I'm going to go into underneath all of these stitches in my corner, leading up to this last one, and then I'm just going to split the yarn here. I don't know if you can see that, but I have that last little piece. I kind of came in and split the yarn right there and pulled my needle through. And the splitting the yarn, like I said, just kind of acts like an anchor. So then I'm going to pull that, but not too tightly because I don't want it to yank on these stitches. And from here, what I like to do is I've already tied a knot where I began my work, so I'm not too worried about that yarn. I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to tie a little knot right there. And you split the yarn so that, again, it creates a nice little anchor point for your knot. Pull nice and tight. And then once I have pulled tightly, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go back in through the opposite side and kind of come out in a random spot, not necessarily all the way at the end. I'm also splitting up some of the yarn again, but just come in through the other side. And I want you to watch because I'm going to take that knot with me. Just like that. So one is secure with a knot over here, and this end that was outside of my work, the last little working thread yarn I had, is now being secured with a knot on that side. At this point, I feel pretty secure in mine. If you want to weave through a little bit more for your own security, you can. Just keep in mind that the more you go back and forth over these stitches, the bulkier it's going to be, and that's going to affect how your work kind of feels. So you want to go back and forth, but you don't want to do too much. Otherwise, it's going to look a little full in those areas. But once I've taken the knot underneath and I don't really see the knot anymore, and it's nice and secured underneath, I'm not really worried about it. And then I just clip my threads, and there you have it. This is your granny square. And from here, you can go ahead and block it, which I have done with this one here to make sure that these corners are nice and firm and secure. And that is how you make a granny square.